I want to start my speech by saying that I come from the future, as you may already know, a future that doesn't seem promising. So I come with a picture of what Australia could become if we don't do anything to stop the looming threats of populism and socialism. As Jordan mentioned previously, I come from Argentina, and I would like to share with you crucial lessons we must learn to safeguard our own future prosperity. So, to understand the decline of Argentina, let me start with some facts. Might be a little bit boring at the very beginning, but I think it's really important to know this information. So, before the First World War, between 1895 and 1896, Argentina achieved the highest average annual growth rate in world history, sustaining a remarkable 6% growth rate for nearly 50 years, and ultimately becoming the wealthiest country in the world. Millions of Europeans at that time fled their home countries to the promised land of Argentina, to an extent that by 1914, half of the inhabitants of Buenos Aires, the capital of Argentina, were foreign-born. So in wealth countries, Argentina was among the top 10 richest countries in the world, surpassing France, Germany, and Italy, what its per capita income was 92% of the average of the 16 wealthiest countries. In 1850, Argentina had a level of wealth equivalent to 30% of Australia's, but by 1914, its wealth level reached 70% of Australia's. However, in the 21st century, Argentina regressed to having only 1/3 of Australia's wealth, indicating a setback of more than a century in relative terms. So, the million-dollar question here is, what happened, right? Why, 100 years later, is Argentina one of the most impoverished countries in the world, as Jordan mentioned before, with one of the highest inflation rates, which is currently set at 124%. Record levels of corruption, rampant insecurity, 43% of the population living under the poverty line. So what had happened is what we said, left-wing populism in Argentina, in this case. So populism. But how did populism become ingrained in the Argentine DNA? So to comprehend the reasons behind Argentina's descent into bankruptcy, poverty, populism, it is essential to explore the ideas and institutions that underpinned its earlier prosperity. And those ideas and institutions were none other than classical liberalism. So Argentina's decline was initiated during the Great Depression, but the moment it faced a crisis compared to the Titanic hitting the iceberg was on October 17th, 1945. So the official commencement of the Peronist movement. So for those who are unfamiliar with Peronism, it is crucial to understand that this ideology plays a central role in elucidating the misfortunes of my nation. Peronism derives its name from Juan Perón, the leader of the Justicialist Party. So Juan Perón was both a fascist and a very close friend of Benito Mussolini. His aim was to ignite nationalist passions and promote anti-American policies, all of which were executed through systematic indoctrination and coercion. So during his government, he nationalized a significant portion of the economy and implemented trade barriers to protect it. So he cut Argentina's ties to the global economy, which had been one of its major sources of wealth. He increased inflation within the society and undermined the foundations of solid economic growth. So this is very important. He implemented the concept of people and the anti-people. So he, as a populist, considered himself the people, and anyone who opposes his will or his ambitions was always considered the anti-people. So which meant they should be marginalized or eliminated. So the Peronist movement advocated for the elimination of economic freedom, thereby nullifying individuals' rights to enjoy the fruits of their labor as much as possible. So they completely destroyed my country. So this populist mentality destroyed my country by increasing the size of government, implemented massive wealth redistribution through extremely high taxes, high inflation rates, capital controls to prevent the outflow of dollars from this country, discretionary control over economic matters, erosion of the rule of law, enormous and inefficient bureaucracies, growing state debt, decline in private investment, increasing unemployment, corruption, escalation of country risk, deterioration of property rights, public security, and the creation of highly inefficient state-owned enterprises. So all these policies, which are still in the current political agenda after 70 years, triggered the fiscal deficit in Argentina. And this is one of the major problems we are still dealing with today. So the Peronist or socialist populist ideology has steered Argentina into a staggering 46% of the workforce currently living below the poverty line. These situations has also taken a toll on economic activity, resulting in Argentina's per capita GDP regressing 2000 to 2007 levels. So we find ourselves at a 13% deficit compared to 2011 levels. So in a sense, we are confronted with a catastrophic situation, and that undeniably leads to increased poverty and suffering. Is everyone hears me? Yeah? Yeah? Yeah. So I will provide you with an example that Javier Milei frequently uses. Thank you. Yeah, all good? There you go, thank you. So consider that Argentina possesses the capacity to produce food for 400 million people. So yet it imposes a hefty 70% tax on the agricultural sector, effectively controlling the food resources meant for 280 million individuals. So shockingly, within Argentina itself, 5 million citizens struggle to afford their daily meals. So clearly there is an issue, and it is core in its extensive involvement of the state. So in reality, as we delved into the concept of social justice, something that the Peronist movement implemented a while ago, so championing the idea that where there is a need, a right is born. So we face a fundamental issue here. So needs are infinite, while resources remain finite. So leaving the question of who should bear the cost of these rights. This predicament has consistently plunged us into fiscal deficits. Over the past 122 years, we have had deficits in 112 of them. Among the 22 crises that have rocked Argentina since the turn of the 20th century, a remarkable 20 have stemmed from fiscal shortfalls. So these crises often taken the form of debt crises, with Argentina now holding the honor of being the largest defaulter in recent history, even surpassing Ecuador. Additionally, our fiscal challenges have materialized as attempts to use monetary policies to fund these deficits, resulting in the devaluation of our currency and the stripping away of 5 monetary symbols. We have endured two episodes of hyperinflation, all without the excuse of wartime context. No, I'm not even touching it. There you go. Thank you. Can you hear me now? Yeah, all good. So furthermore, fiscal crises have resulted in a surge in taxation. So Argentina currently bears the weight of the world's heaviest formal tax burden. The agricultural sector bears the brunt of this tax pressure, facing numerous restrictions. So remarkably, even when agricultural producers manage to navigate these restrictions and deductions, they are confronted with an additional burden of 22 taxes. Essentially, the fiscal system operates as a confiscatory mechanism, contributing nothing of value. Now, this cycle of impoverishment created a fertile ground for new ideas that had been locked away and confined for many years. Now, ironically, these were the ideas that had made Argentina the richest country in the world by 1896. So indeed, let's say 5, 10 years ago, these new ideas, not new to the world, but new to Argentina, began to emerge and shattered the chains of oppression in my country. So an unconventional economist started appearing on TV shows and social media platforms, discussing the works of Hayek, Mises, Rothbard, Lucas, Friedman, among others. This marked the onset of the libertarian wave in Argentina, but it wasn't a small wave. It was a tsunami, apparently. So the ongoing political decline in Argentina, the increase in poverty, inflation, identity politics, the left-wing agenda, and the immigration of our best minds have led to the exhaustion of the Argentine society. A society entirely devoid of hope turned its gaze toward a political outsider and presidential candidate, Javier Milei. Although there were already solid references to economic liberalism and even the Austrian school in academia some time ago in Argentina, the eruption of Javier Milei had something distinctive, an engaging charisma rooted in a profound sense of righteous anger, coupled with a touch of madness, I would say. So this unique blend captured the attention of the media and later ignited a social media frenzy. So from Twitter and Facebook to YouTube and more recently TikTok, Javier Milei's presence spread like wildfire. So Milei's plans for Argentina, if you don't already know that, is a liberal revolution. He wants to turn Argentina back into a rich and prosperous country. He promises to carry out a major reform of the state. He has committed himself to reducing public spending by 15% immediately, reducing the number of ministries from 18 to 8, progressively putting an end to social payments, replacing public works with concessions, and privatizing many of the companies still owned by the state. So that is what libertarians have called the chainsaw plan. So in order to carry out all the reforms promised by Milei, he would not only need to win the presidential election, but also to get support from the parliament. So if I have to conduct a cost-benefit analysis here, from my point of view, Milei's political, social, and economic agenda is what Argentina needs. The opposition still adheres to extreme left or social democratic ideologies we have already tried for many years and never work. But I must also be honest and highlight those aspects of Milei's views that libertarians and free thinkers should pay attention to, where there might be some costs we could potentially pay. So in my opinion, we can understand Javier Milei's phenomenon as a form of libertarian populism. This concept is similar to what Murray Rothbard referred to as right-wing populism back in the 90s. So Rothbard believed that instead of relying on intellectual elites and social groups and special groups to change things from within the system, we should have charismatic leaders who stand up against a corrupt elite, including politicians and big business interests. So these leaders would challenge the idea of blindly supporting the government, business, and a special interest group. So Rothbard's approach is the one Milei has adopted. So Rothbard emphasizes the distinction between the regular people and the wealthy elite, using populist rhetoric that divides society into the anti-people, ruling class, and the people themselves. So Milei also uses similar language, often criticizing the political elite as senseless, parasitic, and corrupt. So furthermore, Milei also gains support from conservative groups. This is not just a political strategy, it aligns with Milei's personal beliefs. So he's known for his strong anti-abortion stance and his support for leaders like Trump, Bolsonaro in Brazil, and Vox in Spain, all of whom hold conservative views and matters related to private lives sometimes. So this aligns with the conservative libertarian partnership, which plays a significant role in Milei's movement. Now, to me, this is very important. Now, why the eruption of Javier Milei is resonating through the Western world? So from my perspective, his eccentric character has roused dormant lions. But how did he do it? Before entering politics, Milei engaged in a relentless battle. He subjected himself to the onslaught of the leftist mainstream media, and he succeeded. He couldn't be silenced. He began by educating people on liberal values, articulating in an exceptionally clear manner how and why Argentina was prosperous and how our country, due to the leftist policies, has now become one of the poorest countries in the world. So Milei fought what we say the culture war. He understood that interventionist ideas weren't limited to flourishing in Argentina alone. They were infecting and gaining control over liberal institutions worldwide. Now, from my perspective, the decline in the battle of ideas began shortly after the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989. So when the Soviet Union crumbled, it became clear that socialism led to hunger, suffering, violence, and oppression. The world that favored liberal values celebrated this revelation. However, there was a problem. Liberalism seemed to grow complacent. It shifted focus to managing the economy and handed over the battle of ideas and politics to the left. So meanwhile, the left, which had been defeated after the wall's collapse, morally rearmed itself and began to emerge from the rubble. It shook off the dust and started constructing a new framework while the liberal world remained completely passive. So currently, liberalism appears divided, disorganized, and on the defensive. It settles for governing from time to time on the tilted board of politics, as expressed by the historian and politician Argentine-Spanish Cayetana Álvarez de Toledo. So the left is always at the top of the court, playing with advantage. The right, on the other hand, struggles at the bottom, trying to climb the ramp with the burden of its moral illegitimacy. Sometimes it gains government, but never attains power. So this has happened in Spain, in Latin America, and occurs in many corners of the West. So the left did a remarkable exercise of political cross-dressing, a testament to its chameleonic capacity for survival. It replaced equality with identity at its totem and cause, embracing a new form of collectivism, tribalistic instead of universalist. Under this banner, it began to regain ground, first in universities, then in the media, in culture, and finally in politics. So in today's world, the modern left often highlights the idea that victimhood among certain groups they claim to represent, like human, LGBTQ+ community, indigenous people, transgender individuals, etc. So as I mentioned before, the left relies on the concept of victimhood as a source of power. Initially, it championed the grievances of workers, but over time, this led to destruction. Later on, it turned to the victimhood of minorities who have faced historical discrimination. However, this isn't necessarily to empower them, but rather to maintain their status within predefined categories and keep them reliant on the government. The left poses a perverse dilemma. John might know this. If you don't submit, it subjects you to the Twitter firing squad, label you as a fascist, sexist, and racist. So in fact, if the left has made a strong comeback throughout the Western world, it's not so much due to its own political, economic, or moral merits. It is to a large extent because of our mistakes. This might be unsettling, I know, but it has a positive reading. Our success, winning elections, gaining power, and realizing the hope for strong, vibrant, and democratic countries depend on us. So when it comes to Australia, our mission and responsibility entailed the creation of political alternatives across the nation. Merely possessing the right perspective is insufficient. We need to translate reason into representation. This requires 4 essential elements: leaders, ideas, courage, and unity. Any void, including the void of ideas, eventually gets filled. By remaining on the sidelines, we pave the way for others to seize the center stage. When politics shies away from reality out of fear or calculation, it allows political correctness to dominate. And this eventually gives rise to populism and anti-political sentiments, as is evident in the Western world today. So our center-right parties often focus on winning elections independently of their ideas, rather than winning because of them. Unfortunately, this approach leads to their cultural defeat by absence. Center-right parties sometimes wrongly assume that citizens are solely driven by materialistic concerns related to their wallets. However, the truth is that human beings possess ideas, ideals, and aspirations. We are inherently moral creatures. Center-right parties make the mistake of divorcing ideas from governments, as if governance were devoid of underlying principles. They tend to overlook that ideas of freedom have played a pivotal role in elevating millions from poverty while uniting principles of justice, progress, and dignity. Some center-right parties mistakenly allow themselves to be defined and intimidated by the left, often striving desperately for the level of moderation, a term that the left bestows when it aligns with the preferences. It's a puzzling aspect of Western politics. The left holds a strong animosity towards the right, aiming to dismantle it, while the right often admires the left and attempts to imitate it. So the solution lies in striving for a more balanced political landscape. So we should strengthen our ideological and political concepts and create alternative approaches with their distinct identity and the capacity to provide a challenge, in a sense, with courage. So finally, in terms of how I envision the future in Argentina, well, it's evident that the political landscape has shifted its orientation. Today, the entire political spectrum leans further to the right, and it signifies something noteworthy and refreshing, to be honest. So if Milei succeeds, Argentina could potentially rejoin the community of nations committed to freedom in the coming years. The foremost challenge here lies in the implementation of reforms. It's not solely a matter of securing majorities in Congress, something Milei might not have, but also entails swimming against the current in a country that, despite showing some signs of change, remains challenging to believe is ready to swiftly abandon its current trajectory overnight. In addition, my fear is, if Milei fails, this might condemn liberalism to ostracism. So I think Australian libertarians should follow the footsteps of individuals like Milei, along with various liberal economists and politicians in Latin America, such as Gloria Álvarez and Axel Kaiser, in the USA with Ron Paul, and in Spain with Cayetán Álvarez de Toledo, who embarked on a cultural battle long ago. Why not? JR here. So why is it important to get involved and fight the battle of ideas? Because what is at stake today, it is the future of the liberal order. In other words, whether if we are going to continue living in democracies where the concept of citizenship based on judging us by our behavior and not by our identity traits will prevail. This is what is at stake, the order of freedom born many years ago, stemming from the Enlightenment, and is what has allowed societies to create peaceful and morally superior democratic orders. Liberalism is the antidote to the two contemporary threats, the implosion of democracies based on identity and the temptation of authoritarianism. So how we cannot fight this war? The challenge at hand is to persuade Australians that socialism and populism is not cool. You would think that socialism has already caused the death of 100 million of people will be enough to persuade them, right? Well, let me tell you, no. Why so hard to get through them? So why do data, economics, logic, and statistics not seem to be enough? Well, neuroscience is teaching us that if an idea doesn't resonate with passion and feeling, it won't stick. So if we only focus on hard data without infusing our ideas with emotion and passion, they won't have the impact we desire. In the Australian context, we must address both social and economic aspects. Simply advocating for free markets while disregarding social issues falls short. This is especially pertinent to the younger generation, both in Australia and globally, who often struggle with issues like low self-esteem, lack of self-belief, limited emotional intelligence, and resilience. These challenges can lead them to reject the concept of free markets. Effectively, persuading individuals about the advantages of free markets economy becomes challenging if they are initially afraid of embracing freedom. Our culture tends to foster a victim mentality, attributing poverty, inequality, or personal shortcomings to external factors instead of emphasizing individual responsibility. Additionally, there exists a fear of disrupting societal norms by expressing dissenting views or unconventional thoughts. So to stop current and future left-wing populism, we must not be quiet. We must speak up. We need to transmit our ideas in a much better way. We don't have to be afraid of confronting people, even if they are family, friends, or random individuals. Choose confrontation over censorship. So by getting involved and fighting to defeat the left-wing agenda, you have the opportunity, and this is crucial, to make Australia the vanguard of a shift in direction across the Western world. Defeat socialism and put an end to vulgarity, decline, and resentment. Transform the country and show that there is a decent, democratic, vibrant, and radiant Australia. Demonstrate to migrants like me and others who have chosen to make Australia our home that is still hope to build a future for those of us who have left our homelands behind. So turn this wonderful night, where we celebrate the Western Australian Libertarian Party Gala, into a turning point. So make my dreams into reality. Thank you very much.